Hi everyone, welcome to this new course that I have here for you, where I'm going to teach you how to create a personal brand. I'm going to start to explain the difference between a personal brand and a commercial or enterprise brand. They're very different, they have different objectives and they are built in a different way. I will start to teach you how to do it, and I'm going to cover the process from the beginning to the end. I recommend you to watch my first course before you get into this one, the basics of graphic design. The previous course is very important because it has some basic and very important concepts that you are going to need in order to create a personal brand that I'm going to teach you right now. This course is not only focused for graphic designers, it can be for people that are trying to develop their own personal business and personal brand, and you are going to be capable of creating your own brand on the end of this course. So if you want to create a brand for your business, if you want to create a brand all around you, all set up for the things that you do and you love to do, this is the perfect place. And also, if you are a graphic designer that wants to know how to create a brand, a personal brand for your clients, for other people, this is the perfect place for you too. So in the beginning, I'm going to try to teach you and to explain some theoretical parts behind all brands, but mainly focused on personal brands instead of just general brands. So in the beginning, I'm going to explain some theory that you need to know before you start, and then we are going to jump in the computer and I'm going to teach you how to do everything step by step. Just a quick brief here on the content of this course. We are going to talk about understanding how a brand works, what's needed to create a brand, what is the thinking that you must have when you try to create a brand. After you've been able to understand the brand that you want to create for yourself or for your clients, I'm going to help you to translate this mindset, this identity and the personality of the brand into visuals and how to communicate visually with your brand. We are also going to talk about some practical points here, like the language that you are going to use on your brand, because it's very important to know if you are wanting to create a brand for your own country or for foreign countries. There are some mistakes that I see a lot out there when it comes to language on your brand. After this theory part where you are going to discuss and understand a brand and your own brand, we are going to jump into more practical things, more practical aspects of creation of a brand, and we are going to discuss how to create a board and what they are used to, because boards are a very important part of the process and it's going to help you to guide you towards the real and final brand. We are also going to cover logos. We are also going to discuss how to choose and to pick the right colors for your brand, how to represent what you are into colors. We are also going to cover typography, identifying with visual elements, and how to use images in your brand. And I'm also going to explain to you why is it so important to create a brand manual, even if you are not a designer creating for a client, if you are creating the brand for yourself. So this is it. I hope you enjoyed this course and see you in the next video. Hello, thank you for being here with me in this course, and let's jump right into it. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how the project of this course is going to be. So as you may already know by the intro and by the title of the course, I'm going to explain to you how to develop your own personal brand, and the project for this course is going to actually be your brand. And what I want you to deliver to me in the end of this course is your brand manual, so we can discuss all the mistakes or the best things that you did. I'm going to review your brand for the purpose that you want to create. It can be for any area that you want. If you are creating something like me, like an educational channel, if you are creating something like some fitness page or anything that you want to create online, even if you want to sell your own handmade products or anything that fits into a personal brand. And if you already got into here, you already know it. In the end of this course, what I want you to deliver me is your brand manual with all the rules that you want your brand to follow, and the future designers that may be working on your brand follow with your brand and why. So I'm going to explain you step by step how to create. In the next videos, I'm going to explain to you some of the theories that's behind a personal brand, and using the theory that I'm going to teach you in the next videos, we are going to start creating your own personal brand. So see you in the next video and get prepared for this amazing project of creating your own brand. Okay, so you want to create your personal brand, but first, do you know what is a brand? Because to know the difference between a standard brand and a personal brand, first you need to know what a brand is. For this, I'm going to tell you the story in how the brands appeared in our world. Basically, in the past, before even currency was invented, everything was made by trading. And different products had different values. How would people evaluate the value of each type of product? Because many different products has many different values. Even if it was the same kind of product, the value could be very different. So what's the difference between like one cow and another cow? And why am I talking about cows right now? Because this is how brands appeared in the world. Brands started to qualify, to evaluate the quality of cows, of cattle. Brands appeared in the world to qualify and to identify different brands, different producers, and different people that has and created cattle to sell for meat or for other functions in the past. So let's suppose that I am a very good cattle creator. How am I supposed to make my cows and my cattle to be identified and to be valued more than the ones that spend less to create the same kind of cattle? They created a system of branding. They created a logo that they would iron, they would heat the iron and mark all of the cattle and all of the cows, bulls, horses, and other kind of animals that they created to ensure that that cow, that cattle, that whatever, that animal was a high quality animal. If you wanted a cheap horse because that's all that you can afford, just like in everything else right now with cars, cell phones, technology, and so on. So you would search for the brand that fits your budget and also that fits the necessity that you have right now. So you would look for brands and you would search for new brands, to know new brands that create the perfect animals for your needs. And this is why brands appeared, to identify different kinds and different categories, values, different qualities of animals and products. In the beginning, brands were only created and only used to identify the quality of the animals, but after some time, other kinds of vegetables and other kind of producers ended up also using brand for their products to position themselves in the market. So this is the main function of a brand. Now that you already know how brands appeared and why are they used for, so they are used to identify the quality of your products. Now that you already know why they were created and how they were created, it's the time to explain you the difference between a standard brand and a personal brand. Basically, the function of a personal brand is the exact same of a commercial brand or a business brand, because you are just trying to identify your work. In my case, because it's much easier to explain my own case instead of searching for other cases, in my own personal brand, I use it to identify everything that I do on my social media, my YouTube channel, and my Skillshare channel. So everything that I do must follow the same rules in order to people just look at it, look at something that I created and know immediately that I was the one that created it. So when you see a thumbnail of a video of my YouTube or a cover of a post that I create for Instagram, and also the cover that I create for all these videos that you are watching right now on Skillshare, you possibly and you should know or should think and feel that it was created by the same person because it follows the same branding. The main goal of a brand is to identify what your work is and where you put yourself in the internet or in the real world. So everything is made to identify and also to communicate without you being there. So every time that you see a thing that was made by me, I have thought about some visual kind of communication and some kind of graphics and shapes and colors that represent the thing that I try to represent to you when I'm talking directly to you in my products. This thing right here, this course that you are watching right now is my product. This is one of my products, but you see my face. You don't need my brand here to see that I am the one who sends you the message, because you are right away seeing my face all over the course. And I have my own personality, as you already know if you watched my past courses and if you watch my YouTube channel. Also, you are going to notice that I'm trying always to entertain people, not just to educate in a very straight and boring way. I'm always trying to make something interesting and sometimes trying to make you laugh, like in the last course where I replaced my face by a monkey. Go watch that course too, how to create a carousel for Instagram. This is my brand. This is the reason I choose to use some kind of graphics in my brand. This is why I choose to use my color, the shapes, and everything that I do. I try to pass this message. So what's the main difference between a personal and a corporate brand? The main difference that you have when you are talking about a personal brand or a corporate brand is that when you are talking about a corporate brand, you are talking about a group of people. In this group of people, they are responsible to give you the best value of the products. It will always depend on what you want to communicate and where you want to position yourself. But the biggest difference is that when you are talking about a corporate brand, you are talking about a group of people. And when you are talking about a personal brand, almost everything are focused on one person. And it's much more of a person-to-person connection than a person-to-entity, like it is when you talk, like, for example, with Apple or Canon or Sony. There are many different brands that you don't know the actual face of the brand. Because in my case, you are always seeing my face whenever you visit something that is related to my products. When you see my course, you are always seeing this face. When you visit my YouTube channel, you're always seeing this face. And when you visit my Instagram profile, in the end of all the educational carousels that I create, you are always going to see, guess what? This pretty face. So this face is everywhere, and my brand is my face. The difference is when you are creating a personal brand, you have to think about few things that you are not going to think about when you create a corporate brand. And when you create a corporate brand, you don't need to think about many things that you would think about in a personal brand. After all, if you already work with both kinds of projects, personal brands and also corporate brands, you are going to notice that's much easier and much simpler to create a personal brand than a corporate brand. Because when you try to create a personal brand, you just have to study the person that's on the top of the brand, the person that you are creating the brand for, and also you have to study the audience that's going to use the products and the services of this personal brand. Because in the personal brand, you just have to know one person. You have to know how this person behave with the audience of the brand. And when you are talking about a corporate brand, you have to evaluate many different things about the brand. You have to evaluate how the society behind the brand behaves, how the products are created. So you have to assign personal characteristics, human characteristics, to something that's not human. That's a brand, that's a logo. The face of a person normally is the logo of a personal brand or the signature, because this is how people will identify a personal brand. And in the case of a brand, you are trying to give a face by using the logo, because you probably don't know the face of the owner of Sony or Canon. And also there's there's a kind of tricky solution that some brands find to trick you and to feel more connected and closer to the brand. If I ask you to think right now about a brand that you know who is the owner or the person in the front of the business, you are probably going to think either about Apple or Microsoft, because of Steve Jobs and Tim Cook on Apple and Bill Gates on Microsoft. And this is because they tried to create a kind of a personal/corporate brand, because they have a corporate brand because they are huge and they produce products that are technology. So it's very difficult to create a personal brand that's set to the technology field. So what they made to create an easier connection with the audience that they have for the brand is that they created a kind of a personal brand behind the corporate brand. So they associated the brand Apple with this kind of person that Steve Jobs was? Or did you never notice that Steve Jobs' behavior and the way to talk and the way to dress is very similar to the way that Tim Cook appears on the stages? Okay, they are very different people, but they have some similarities. I'm going to show some pictures in the screen right now so you can agree or disagree with me. So this is a strategy that they created. They tried to make a personal brand out of a corporate brand. They try to mix the two strategies. But if you are just starting, there's no problem for you to create just a personal brand. There are huge personal brands out there. And this is something that mostly appeared because of this new era of YouTube and content creators that doesn't need the television. Actually, the personal brand was created with television and with radio in the old times, where you know people and the brand of this person because they are famous, for example. Like, you know many people from TV, you know many actors and actresses, you know them because they have their faces and they appear a lot on the videos, on movies, I mean. And when you see a film, a movie of a person, of an actor, you already can expect something to come out of it. So whenever you see a Chuck Norris movie, you already know what kind of movie you are going to watch. And this happens because they have their own brand. They don't want to appear in very different kinds of movies. And this is why actors and actresses, they almost always appear on similar kinds of movies, because they have their own specialties. They know what they are good at, and their brand, their personal brand, is to do that kind of movies. This is why and how brands differentiate from personal brands. Just to summarize everything, personal brands are brands focused on only one person. You don't need a complex logo. You can have one, but if you don't have, it's okay, because you are already showing your logo. The thing that's going to identify you is your face, or maybe your signature, because it's something that has more a personal. And a corporate brand is more of a translation, an assignment of human characteristics to something not human. And this is the main difference between a corporate and a personal brand. A personal brand is easier to develop because it's more direct, while when you create a corporate brand, you are trying to translate and to assign personal feelings, personal connections into something that's not a person. And now that you already know the difference between a corporate and a personal brand, I'm going to teach you, and I'm going to ask you some questions about what do you want to create and what do you want to communicate. So this way you are going to be able to narrow down everything, all the characteristics of yourself as a person to convert to a personal brand. We are going to narrow down so you can know exactly what you should do. See you in the next video. So now that we already know what's a brand, what's the difference between a corporate brand and a personal brand, I'm going to start the thinking, the theory part, not start the theory part because we already started the theory part, but I'm going to start to show you how and guide you towards the final brand that you are going to create for yourself or for a client. And to explain the effect and to explain everything, I'm going to use a very funny example that probably most of you already know, or if you don't know, I'm going to present you right now. I like to call it the Akinator or Akinator Effect. And what is this? You probably already know about this gene right here. This gene right here. And it is a website that was developed that makes a kind of a trick that he makes some kinds of questions for you. And with the questions that this gene is making for you, he's going to guess, and probably going to guess right, the person that you have on your mind right now. So he's going to ask you to think about a character or a person in your life, and he's going to guess who this person is, and probably they are going to guess right. And I'm going to explain to you how does it work and what does it have to do with the creation of your personal brand. The way that the questions he does, I strongly recommend you right now to go to this website and to try a little, make this game like 2 or 3 times right now. The website is this one. I'm also going to leave the link on the resource folder, and try to play this game like 2 or 3 times. And how does it work? He makes questions and he attributes some characteristics to different personalities. So let's suppose that you are talking about, I don't know, John Jones, the UFC fighter. Let's suppose that you are talking about him. One of the first questions that he always does is they are going to ask me if I know this person personally in real life. So when I replied no, when I select that I don't know this person, they are automatically going to delete my parents, my family, my friends. So they already know that these people are not the answer for the person that I'm thinking right now. Do you get it? They are going to narrow down the possibilities. They're going to ask if it is a person related to sports. And if you answer yes, they're going to eliminate all the possibilities that are not related with sports. So all the actors that doesn't have a fit or sports background, they're going to eliminate all the scientists or all the people that doesn't have a background on sports. They're also going to ask you the skin color, the hair color, and these things are going to narrow down the possibilities, because taking into consideration the answers that you gave on the 25, I guess there are 25 questions that they make, based on the 25 replies, answers that you have, that you choose on the game, they're going to narrow down and they're going to present, they're going to say that the person that they think you are thinking about is the person that has the highest probability of being. So most of the times they're going to guess it right, because they narrow down so much the amount of people that could be in the 25 questions that they're probably going to guess it right. And what does it has to do with the creation of a brand? Because the process is the same. To think about the brand that you want to create and to know what you should do and what should you communicate on your brand, you are going to do some kind of questions that's going to narrow down the possibilities of what you want to represent graphically and visually. So let's suppose that in my project, let's figuratively say that I want to create a gaming channel. Automatically, when I say that I want to create a gaming channel, all the pastel colors and all the serif with like huge spaces in between letters are automatically discarded. The first thing that you should do when you are creating a personal brand is write down all the characteristics of your brand. Is it a brand to what? What's the style? What's the audience? And these questions is what we are going to talk about in the next video. And in the next video, we are going to discuss what are these Akinator questions that you should do to develop the look of your brand in order to get a cohesive communication and to convey the message that you want and you need to your brand. And everything that you should do right now is the process we have to do even before we start the process of creating logos, creating the identity, creating the colors and stuff. So see you in the next video. Thank you for being with me so far. Now that you already know why you should do these questions, just to narrow down and to discard useless things from your brand, I'm going to tell you what are the questions that you should ask yourself. So I'm going to put them right big here on the screen. I strongly advise you to take a notebook right now or write it on a Word document or a notepad or whatever you want, but write these questions down because this is very important before the next video, not before the next video, because the next video is going to be the second part of the questions. So in the video after the second video of questions, you should answer and try to search for answers for all the questions that you already made on your brand, and don't go to the next video, to the video next, the next one, the video after the next one, without replying all the questions, okay? And the first question is, what is your niche? It is very important to choose a niche, and don't confuse yourself. A niche is very different from a field of knowledge. Let's suppose that you are a graphic designer. Saying that your niche is graphic design is nothing, because graphic design is a full area, is a complete area. It's not a niche. And people should focus on a single niche of the market, because it's much easier to turn out to be an expert. Because if you focus yourself only in one thing, only in one niche, you are going to be the expert on this part. Because if you study like 10 years of a single niche, you are going to be much better at this very specific situation than people that has general knowledge about the field, like graphic design, for example. And when you are talking about graphic design, in my experience as a designer, I specialized myself in packaging for many years. It doesn't mean that I must do packaging and only packaging for the rest of my life. So I have 10 years of experience as a graphic designer turned to the niche of packaging at this very moment. But also, I tried a lot of branding. I studied a lot of branding, and this is something that I'm teaching you right now, because in the past 3 years, the main thing that I have been doing was branding instead of packaging. Now I'm trying to turn my career into more a branding and self-branding and personal branding niche. So inside of the graphic design field, my niche right now is personal branding. So how answering this question will help you in the process of creating your personal brand? When you know what's your niche inside of your area, you are going to delete many general concepts, things on your area. Let's suppose that you are a mechanic, that your niche is actually more towards tires in the mechanics field or a cars field. It's going to set you apart from mechanics that solves other kinds of problems besides tires. So the branding is going to be much more focused on a specific thing. So like in your logo, you should avoid trying to be very descriptive. But let's suppose that you are creating a background, a texture for your web page or for your Instagram. Instead of making a photo of a car, of a motor opened that has many different things inside of it, you are just going to focus on the tires, because this is your niche. If you are a graphic designer and you are a web graphic designer, you are creating websites, so you won't need to communicate anything that has some relation with branding or with typography. Maybe you are going to focus your communication in your visual elements all towards the coding and all towards the web development, web design. And this is why you should choose a niche, because it's going to make your life much easier when you are developing your visual communication. Now, the second question is, what is your mission? So it's, besides money, why are you doing this? What made you jump into this field? And if you don't have the answer for this question, you are in the wrong niche and you are doing the wrong thing. Because if you are doing this only for the money, not because you enjoy the process and not because you enjoy everything that's related to this area, you shouldn't be doing this. In my example, my mission is to educate clients and educate designers. So what I want to do is to make people that are not designers to respect more the work of designers. Because one thing that I know and I notice in my entire career and all the path that I had until now is that designers are not often taken seriously. Most of the times the clients just tend to disagree on designers just because of visuals, and they don't understand the importance of the message that they are trying to convey, instead of just making something look pretty, because pretty is something that's relative. What's pretty for me is not pretty for you, and what's pretty for you is not pretty for me. So it's relative. All the pieces of design shouldn't ever be related to what's beautiful or not. Instead, they should work or not. And when you go to the doctor and he says that you have a specific disease and these are the medicine to treat this disease, normally people respect the opinion of the doctor and they take the medicine that the doctor told them to take because they respect the doctor. And when it comes to design, many people hire professional designers. They spend thousands of dollars, euros, or whatever your currency is, but they spend lots of money with that graphic designer, and still they kind of disagree with many of the decisions. I'm not saying that you should take everything, but you should kind of understand the way the designer is doing the work and never do the thing of telling the designer to change it because it's ugly, because design is not about beauty or ugliness. And this is my mission right now. I want to educate clients on design. I want clients to give more value to designers and to design in general. Make clients understand that using a logo generator is the same thing as having no logo at all, because it's not going to improve the communication of your brand. It's not going to help you identify your brand. Maybe it will help you to identify, but it's not going to convey the message of your complete brand, because the logo should have the same kind of communication that your full brand has. So the logo is used to identify and the brand is used to communicate. So what is your mission? Why are you doing this? What do you want? And I also want to help the designers, the new designers, to understand the importance of knowing the theory behind design, because at this very moment I'm seeing a lot of this. I've seen this since I started on design, but many people that call themselves designers, they never studied design, not only on university, because I don't believe that you really need a university college degree to be a graphic designer. Although I have one, I don't believe that it's something that's mandatory for you to be a graphic designer. But they don't even try to study for themselves. They just learn Photoshop and Illustrator and call themselves designers. And my mission is to make designers understand that knowing Photoshop and Illustrator doesn't make you a designer. And this is one of the main thing, the main mission that I have. So the two missions that I have is trying to educate designers to be real designers instead of Photoshop users and Illustrator masters, instead in calling themselves designers, and educate clients to give the right value to graphic design. And the next question is, who is it created for? And why is it? Remember the funnel, the narrow down that we are doing with the Akinator questions? Who is it created for? Remember, if your target is some kind of makeup blog thing, if you are an influencer that is turned to the makeover and to beauty products and stuff related to beauty, you are not going to make something very rough and male-like and something very radical, like if you were a parachute vlogger or something more radical. So you would eliminate all the possibilities of using something more radical, more live colors. You would use more girly, like more pastel colors, more light colors, less saturated colors, because this is what's going to connect easier with your audience. So you not only has to take into account what you are doing, who you are, but you also have to take into account who are you creating it for. So you have to remember your audience. Always remember that your audience is who you are creating it for. And also the last question of this video, because I have 4 questions in the next video, but the last question of this video is, who are your competitors? And why is this question important? Because you should inspire on them. You should never copy them, but you should see what they are doing, see what they get right and what they get wrong, and try to kind of understand what they're doing and understand how you should put yourself in the same field, in the same niche of your competitors, and avoid being behind them. And also, I'm not saying that you should copy them, never copy, but you should know what they are doing in order to know what works and what doesn't work. So be aware of your competition. These were the first 4 questions of the Akinator questions, and I see you in the next video. Hello again! In the previous video, we discussed the 4 first Akinator questions that you should have in your mind when you create your own personal brand. And they were: what is your niche? What is your mission? Who is it created for? And who are your competitors? So make sure that you write down all these questions and you reply it. You can write down the questions that I'm going to see in the second video right now, and you can reply all of them. But I strongly advise you to reply all the questions before you go into the next video, okay? And in this video, I'm going to tell you the next 4 questions that you should do before you even start developing and thinking about what you're going to do with your brand. And the first question of the second video is, what is your pricing? Because yeah, I really think that you should always think of monetizing your page in your content for your personal brand somehow, because if you don't, what's the point on what you are doing right now? So I strongly recommend you to think about what's the price, what's going to be the price range, and where you're going to position yourself in comparison to your competitors. And this is why in the last video I asked you to know about your competition, because you should know how you position yourself on the market. Are you something more affordable, or are you something more premium, expensive? So you should take this into account when you create your brand, because the kind of communication should be according to the price that you have. Because if you have something that's very premium, looks very premium, and actually you are a kind of affordable brand, when people get into your page, they're going to feel that they're being tricked, because let's suppose that you have a premium vibe on your brand, but you are actually a affordable kind of brand. When people get to your page or your landing page or your Instagram or wherever they are going to have access to your products and services, they're going to feel that they're being tricked, because something should be wrong about this. They're not going to feel comfortable paying less in a thing that looks premium. They're going to be expecting something to go wrong, because you are looking something very premium, although you are very affordable. And this is a thing that you should avoid, because people will not trust you and they are going to buy less from you. And the thing that you want more when you have a kind of an affordable brand is to get money from high amount of people buying you. You're going to earn less from each person that's going to each customer. You're going to earn less from each customer, but you want more customers, and this is how affordable brands win. Don't try to trick people into thinking that they are going to get a premium service or a premium product out of an affordable price. There are strategies and brands that works with strategies more for less. That means that you are providing more services or more quality on your services or products for a cheaper value, for a more affordable value, but they have a very specific way to represent this visually. They don't try to look as a premium brand. They try to look as a high quality for a low budget. So keep in your mind what is your pricing, because this is going to narrow down even more your branding possibilities. And the second question is how you position yourself inside of your niche. Remember that we were talking about price against value. Well, this is the part of the value. The first one is the price. What's your price? But for that price, how are you going to position yourself? You're going to present a less for less, like you pay less, but you're going to get less. You're going to present some strategy of the same for less. So it's an average quality of product and services, but for a more affordable price. Or you have a more for more like Apple. This part is more related with the value that you can present on your products or in your services. And the third question is, how do you differentiate yourself inside of your niche? This is where you're going to think about what specifically make you highlight yourself, what make you stand out yourself from your competition. And this is very important, because this is something that you are going to always keep in your mind when you are creating your designs. I have an example for you. I have a client that do marketing, digital marketing, and for a very traditional kind of client. So this client, he wants to set a kind of traditional client into more of a digital world. So when I developed the brand for him, I tried the most I can to make the digital part, but to have a little connection with the physical world too. This was one of the questions that most impacted the creation for this brand, because I wanted the clients, his clients, to think and to know that he is more focused on digital part, but he also knows how to deal with the physical part too. And the last question for the questions, the Akinator narrow down kind of questions that I need you to reply before you go into the next video, is how to convey your specific message. This is where you already know how to position yourself. You already know all the answers. This is the last question that you should answer: how to convey a specific message. Now is the part that we are going to start thinking. Don't think about the visual part, don't think about the design part yet. Just try to think about all the answers that you gave before, and what kind of things that you should do for your brand. What kind of vibe would you like to give to your brand? taking into account all other answers that you already gave in this video and in the past video too. All design, all branding are made to solve problems, and based on the last questions you are going to create the problem that must be solved. For this client that I used as an example for this question, I took into account all the previous questions to create this new challenge to solve. How you're going to solve the problem of, and the answer for this question would be how to convey this message, and the answer is the problem to all the previous questions. The answer for this question should be something like how to solve yada 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 problem. Using as an example the client that I told you before, how to solve the problem of clients that are used to the traditional media to go into the digital media. How would I convey the message of turning something traditional into digital, and how would I make it convincing for clients that are more used to traditional media? This question is the main question that you are going to have to solve, is the problem that you have to solve with the branding that you are going to create in this course. You shouldn't think about how to solve it just yet, but you should think about what's the main question based on the all last questions. What is the main question? What's the main problem that you have to solve with your brand? I hope you get all the answers that you need right now to narrow down and to have a more clear idea of what you should do on your brand in this course. And see you in the next video, where I'm going to explain to you how to translate these concepts, these questions that you just answered, into visual communication. Now, before we go forward, I already said it, but answer all the Akinator questions that I just made you in the past 2 videos before you're starting this. I'm going to wait. I'm waiting. Reply the questions. Okay, the joke is over. Now that you already answered all the questions that you have, I want you to try to translate it into a more visual thing, a more visual way to communicate the answers that you gave me on the last videos. I'm going to summarize everything that you should keep in your mind before you start creating. The first thing, a corporate brand doesn't have a face. I already said this before, but it doesn't have a face attached to it. So it depends on a logo. And this logo is what's going to set you and what's going to identify you in the market and against your other competitors. And what's the difference between a corporate brand and a personal brand when it comes to a logo? Hello again, and in this video I'm going to explain to you why do you need to take into account the language that you are going to use when you create your personal brand. The main point here is you should think about, will you create your brand for more of a local thing or more of an international thing? And why is it so important? Basically, when you are looking for a more of an international brand, you have to take into account that various kind of cultures are going to have access to your content. And this will bring a whole new level of challenges because it's impossible to know and to take into account all the different cultures and habits and things that they do and things that they feel like is disrespectful. It's very hard to take everything into account. So when you are trying to create an international brand, first thing, when you are trying to communicate with your audience, never use two languages. If you are trying to access a more of an international instead of a national or local audience, I strongly recommend you to use English as the main language. And why is it? It's because English is one language that has the most reach around the world. Mandarin is the language that most people talks in the world, but there are many people that speaks Mandarin and also speaks English, but not the other way around. If you are like a native English speaker, there are very rare cases where those people are going to learn Mandarin, and the same thing happens to other languages. So if you are trying to make an international brand to affect other countries but yours, always use English as the main language. And why is that so important? Because besides the language, you should have in your mind all the cultural stuff related to some things that you should never know about, because it's almost impossible to take into account all the different cultures in this world. And you have to be very careful to not be disrespectful with brands, and you should always also be humble to take back some things that make sense to take back when you are using an international brand, even if it doesn't make sense to you, unless it's something that's just dumb or that you don't really feel that you are missing the respect with your brand. But try to choose a single language for your content, because everything that you are going to create on your brand is going to be affected by the language that you choose. This is a very short video because it's something that's small, but you shouldn't forget about this. Choose the language before you start doing everything, because if you create your branding document on the end of this course in your native language, and then you try to hire an international graphic designer to create the rest of your brand, or to make it better, or to make some changes when you get lots of work on your field to do, and you have to hire a different graphic designer to continue the brand work, they're going to have a bad time if you write everything in German, for example, and the designer don't speak German. So make sure that you are going to create your document, because you are going to write a few things on your document too. So make it sure that you are using everything in English. For this course, you are going to have to make everything in English because I just speak in English. If you want to make the document in Portuguese, you can do it too, but I strongly recommend you to do it in English, because if you want to hire another designer to create the rest of your brand, you are going to want to be the easiest possible to this designer to get the work done, and use English if you are going for an international brand and if you work with an international scale. This is it for this video. It was a short one. We are going to jump right into practical part, and we are finally going to start to build our brand. See you in the next video. Hello again, and for you it's just a click, but for me it's a whole new day here. When I started this course, I just thought that I was going to explain to you how to use the boards like theoretically, but I thought that it would be better to show you actually something going on the screen right now, instead of just me speaking to you, just to make it easier and more clear the way that brands are created. So what I did was I created a brand for my girlfriend. That's the one that you are going to see right now. And I'm going to go through all the process of her brand. I'm not going to do everything live because it would take like an eternity to get it done. So I'm going to show you the result of the brand and all the boards, and I'm going to explain how did I create these boards, and I'm going to teach you how to go through the process yourself. Again, the brand that you are going to see here is a brand that I created for this course, but to the future use for my girlfriend's brand. And before we start this part of the course, it's very important for you to know that there are many different ways to create a brand, many different ways to think about the brand that you are going to create before you actually creating it, because it's not just everything pops on your head and you start doing things. No, it doesn't work like this. And one thing that you should know is this is not the only process to create a brand. This is the process I use and I recommend to, because it's much easier and clean than most of the processes that I tried before. It's very clear the way that the brand is going to show up and to appear. It's kind of like a magic. So to get it done, I create 3 different boards. And what are boards? Boards are a kind of panel, a kind of an artboard that has some images on it, or references or styles. And for this process, for a personal brand, what I create are 3 different boards. They are the Moodboard, the reference board, and the Scape. Then they are going to help you in different phases of the project. The first one is the Moodboard. The first thing that I made here is, I'm going to share my screen right now. I created a profile for the client, because in your case, if you are creating the brand for yourself, this person that I'm showing right now, it's going to be you. In this case, it's Daniela, that's my girlfriend, and she is the client for this brand. So if you are creating the brand for someone else, for a client or for a friend or whoever you want to create a brand for, you are going to need to set up a profile for the client or for the owner of the brand. In this case, it's Daniela. This is the information that it's a very superficial. If you are going to use this in comparison to a corporate brand, it would be much harder to develop the profile of the brand, because you would need to know about some characteristics that are not human, because a company is not a human being. So it's much easier to understand and to deal with personal brands, because you are creating things from humans to humans instead of a corporation to humans. And this is the profile that I created to her. This is the things that I thought that I felt that is important to put in the brand. So her name, her age, what's her goal, what kind of page she's going to build, some personal characteristics of her that should be represented in her brands, like the creativity, the fun, calm, smart, and feminine, that are some characteristics of her, and also some goals with her brand. So the brand, it has some goals to accomplish. The brand that belongs to Daniela has some goals. As you can see here, I'm using Illustrator, by the way, to create this, and this whole course is going to be taught on Illustrator, but you can use whatever software you feel comfortable with. If you want to create it in Canva or Photoshop or, I don't know, CorelDRAW, any kind of software that you want and you feel comfortable with, you can use it. It doesn't make much difference. In this case, the goals of her brand is she's going to create a page for Instagram. So I believe most of you that came here through my Instagram are going to want to create one too. She wants to create a brand to deal with new creators on Instagram. She's going to teach things about growth on Instagram, because many of the things that I made in my page about the growth, the strategy behind my page, many things were also advised by her and studied by her, not only by me. We are like a team. And in this case, we are going to launch soon, not now, but soon, a brand for her. And these are the characteristics, these here are the characteristics for her brand. She wants to help creators to grow their social media. They want to teach people how to get some income, help people with the income from social media. All the things that she's going to do is marketing, but turn to the digital world, to organic social media growth and this kind of stuff. She's not going to do like Facebook or Instagram ads. She's just going to teach people on a digital way. So she has a more modern vibe. And why? Because it's digital and affordable, because she doesn't want you to invest like thousands of dollars or your own currency in ads. What she wants is for you to grow organically. So these are the characteristics of Daniela, and this is the characteristics of her brand. If you are doing this brand for someone else, I advise you to create a kind of a sheet like this, where you are going to fill this up with the information, with personal information, with the business information, and with some personal characteristics of her personality, like this part right here. So after you create the profile of the owner of the brand, what you are going to need to do is you are going to need to create a persona. And what is a persona, you ask me? The persona is the ideal client. So when you think about the people that's going to use your brand, use your products, are going to follow you in social media and stuff, who is this person? What's her name or his name? Is he or she a male or a female? What's the age? What's the job? Is he or she married or single, and stuff like this. So you can see right here, I created a personality. So for this example, I created Claire. That's a invented person. She's a stock photo person. Her name is Claire. She's 28 years old. She is a copywriter coach. So she teaches people how to do copywriting. Also, she's single. She has no kids. She has a college degree and she makes 50K a year. And these are some characteristics of her personality. And everything that is in here is very important when you are deciding what you are going to use to create your personal brand. Because when you create a personal brand, you don't create it for you. You are going to create it for Claire in this case. Many of the things that I'm going to present here on this brand is not on the taste of Daniela. Most of the things are just thought to be on the taste of Claire, because Claire is the ideal customer. Claire is the center of the universe of this personal brand. So everything that we are going to create here is for Claire instead of Daniela. Okay, Daniela can have some things that she says there, but everything should work not for Daniela, but everything should work for Claire. This is something that you should always keep in your mind. Whenever you feel tempted to do things because you like it or you don't, or don't do something because you don't, think that you are not the center of the experience of your brand. The center of the experience of your brand is the person who you are creating it to. So in this case, I'm not selling things to Daniela, I'm selling things to Claire. You should always think this way because you're not creating for yourself. If you are creating the brand for yourself, you have to think this way too. Your taste is not important here. Everything that may be done here is a thing that should work for Claire instead of you. I'm not saying that you are not important on your brand, because you are. Your brand is a personal brand and it's all focused on you, but you should always think about your customers. What you should do about you on your brand is you should always try to think about ways to represent yourself in your brand. In my example, my main color is orange and my favorite color is orange, but I didn't pick orange as the main color of my brand because it is my favorite color. And the proof of this is that I hate magenta. I don't like the color magenta. I think it's ugly, but it brings some values that I wanted in my brand. So I implemented magenta in my brand too. My brand has two colors, orange and magenta. This is the color palettes that I use. And it has a color that I personally don't like, but I know that it works. So this is why I choose that. And this is something that you should keep in your mind too. You are creating for your audience. And why we are doing this? Because we need to create a style, a visual communication style for your brand. And what you are going to do now is I'm going to present you the first board in the next video. What I'm going to show here on the next class is the mood board. A mood board is a thing that you can see right here on the side already. It's going to show the first direction to the creation of your brand. I mean, this is the first direction. You already have the profile of the owner of the brand and also the profile of the user of the brand. And now we are going to mix these characteristics of these two people, how to use the personal characteristics of the owner of the brand to convince Claire to buy from her and to consume her content on social media and stuff. So in the next class, we are going to talk about mood boards. In this class, we are going to talk about some things that you need, some characteristics and some specific things that you need to build and to understand even before you start actually designing the visuals of your brand. Now that you already know who is the owner of the brand and you have all the characteristics of the owner of the brand, and also you created a persona. I don't know if I talked about this on the last class, but you can use this mockup. And normally when you create a persona for a corporate brand, it also is much more complex than this. This is just for a personal brand. That's kind of a simplified persona that you can create. If you want to create something much more complete than this, go on, because the more you feel on this, the more precise you are going to be with your brand. So if you think these characteristics is not enough for you, you can feel it more. So after you doing the things on the last class, we are going to pass on to the mood board. And this is a mood board. What is a mood board, you ask me? The mood board is nothing more than a kind of a board where we are going to look at it and we are going to feel how we were supposed to feel in a brand. Nothing that you are seeing here was created by me. I don't have the rights on anything that you are seeing right now. This is only a thing that we use to try to understand the vibe of the brand. In this part of the process, you are already going to use many of the characteristics that you defined here about Daniela. In my case, in your case, can be about you or about your client. And on Daniela's client, or in your case, should be the client, your clients, or the clients of your client if you are creating the brand for someone else. And here is a kind of what should you feel when you look to the final brand. This is not a brand. This is not the final brand that are going to create. I mean, this has probably almost nothing to do with the final brand, but some of the characteristics that I'm seeing here can be used on the brand after some time. In this situation, what I want you to do is go over some inspirational websites like Dribbble or maybe Pinterest. They are the best to do this. And if you want to, you can go to some free or paid stock photos and try to think and to find images that you think that's going to create the feel that you want for the final brand. You are not going to use anything yet from this because it would be copying and you don't want to copy anything. So the first thing is just create this. Find some images, make an interesting composition with lots of images. If you don't know how to cut images like this, doesn't matter. Just take an artboard, an empty artboard, and create and put the images on the side of each other. The board just has one objective: make you able to feel the vibe of the brand. And what you should do is try to type some of the characteristics that you see here, like woman, young woman. In this case, in your case, can be your persona, and try to search for things like copywriter or coach or writing or young woman, or in the personality you can also use some kinds of things from here, or even from here, creativity, funny, calm. These are the things that I used to find these kind of images on Dribbble and Pinterest. So you type this, and after that you type design, you type ambient, you type food, graphic design, landscapes, or any other thing that you should think that would help you to get the vibe of the brand that you want to create. Because with this kind of information, if you are not a graphic designer, you are going to have some difficulties. It's going to be hard for you to understand how these characteristics and these characteristics would look like in graphic design. So what you should do is just type some of the characteristics that's appearing here. You just type it on Pinterest or Dribbble, and you're going probably to be good to go. And after selecting some images, I advise you to select from, I don't know, 7 to 15 images tops to have a reference from what you want to do. And also here you can create a color palette like I'm creating here. So I took this color from here, this color I took from this sky, this I took from this donut, this I think I got from this microwave, but I'm not sure anymore. Yes, it's a microwave. So you use the palettes that you find, the colors that you find interesting, and as all these images work well together, if you see in harmony here, it's very important for you to create a thing that looks well together, because looking well, yes, it's relative, but you can know when an image has some kind of harmonious combinations, like the colors and the shapes on these images that I'm showing you right now. You can notice that the palette, the colors work very well together in those different images. So what you could do also is trying to find the images by the colors. So in this case, I think many of the images, at least 3 images from these, I typed pastel colors because I thought feminine and digital, they are very related to pastel colors. But if you can't make these kinds of assumptions, there is no problem. Just type the characteristics that you choose for your persona, and also from the profile that you created for your own or your client's profile that you created. And you are going to come up with something like this. But don't forget, visuals here on the mood board is very important. You should look for images that has similar styles. This is it for the mood board. It's very easy to create. It can be very time consuming because it's very hard to find similar images on stock photos and also in Pinterest or other inspirational websites, but you can do it. It's going to take a while. Don't be in a hurry, because if you put it in a hurry right now, you are going to regret later. On the next phases, on the next boards, is going to be much harder for you. So try to find things that it's related to the personalities that I told you before, and you are good to go. And this is it for the mood board. It's something that's specifically made to define the mood of your brand. It's not the final brand, nothing near to the final brand even. In the next class, I'm going to teach you how to do the next board that's called the reference board. Thank you, and see you in the next class. Now that you already have the mood board for your brand or your clients, whatever, I'm going to stop to say this. I'm just going to call it your brand. Doesn't matter if it's really yours or your client. I'm going to start calling it your brand. And now that you already have the mood board for your own brand, what you are going to do is we have to go a step forward, and we have to start deciding few things for your brand. And what we are going to do is we are going to create the second board, and this is my method, and this is the part where things start to be a little different from the standard, because many people jumps from the mood board to the stylescape. That's the final style that's going to guide the brand, but even the stylescape normally doesn't have anything to do with the final brand actually. And when we mix the mood board with the reference board, we are going to come up with the stylescape. But this stylescape is already very close, very close to the final brand in my case, because I use the reference board in the place of the actual standard stylescape. Okay, I don't know if you noticed it on my first course that I made here for Skillshare Basics of Graphic Design. I created a stylescape for a brand, and it was already almost a complete brand by itself. So what we are going to do right now is we are going to take the characteristics of your clients, and we are going to resume them here. We are going to summary them here. It's not the complete thing that we can see here. It's just some key characteristics that should help us to come up with a brand. So from all the last information, including this, and this, what we are going to use is just some characteristics from the client and the mood board at the same time. So what we are going to do now is we are going to create the reference board. And you may be asking me right now, what's a reference board? And a reference board is when you take some key characteristics of the client or the persona for this brand, and we are going to try to translate some of the characteristics into something visual. And this is how we do it. I take the creative term that is the first here from my list up here. And what you are going to do with the creative word, you're just going to take this word creative, that's very important right now. And what you are going to do is you are going to paste this in the same sites where you came up with these images here. So Dribbble and Pinterest, for example, and also some stock photos if you want. In the research folder, I'm going to leave you a text file with the name of all the websites where I took these images from. So what you're going to do is you are going to take each one of these, digital, creative, funny, income, and things like this, and you are going to type design after this, or even just the word. You're going to make 2 searches at least for each one of these words up here, and you are going to take the best results and you are going to translate it into some images, and you are going to try to find some kind of pattern in all the images that you can find on Dribbble, Pinterest, and other stock photos websites. And what I noticed is that when you type creative, most of the things that's related to creativity are artists. So I looked for some kind of more handmade things instead of straight lines, digital lines. I tried to find things that were more handmade and things that were more artsy, if it makes sense for you. So I tried to find things related with arts, and I tried to understand the difference between some standard characteristics from arts and from other kinds of things that could be related with creativity. So here, normally creativity is associated with arts and handmade pieces. So The use of irregular shapes and handmade lines would bring the brand towards a creative style. This is the mindset that I kept when I was looking for the images. So I always tried to find things like this. And the reference board, nothing more is than a bunch of images that you are going to find on the internet to represent this word, the keyword, okay? And in this case, you can see here, I think I found this on Dribbble, and you can see that the shapes here, the drawings, the shapes on the drawings are they're not very linear. They are very artsy. It seems like it was made by hand for someone, or paper cutting or something like this. And also here you have like a brush stroke. So this is where I took this text from. And this is also something that I found when I typed creative. And the same thing can be seen here. You see lots of handmade strokes, handmade dots, or like brush-like dots. And also it seems like it's paper cut in this person, and it mixes with digital shapes here. But most of it it looks like it was something made with brushes. So I thought that to represent the creative part of the brand, it would be very important to have a kind of a brush or artsy shapes on the brand. As we already choose some of the characteristics of the shapes that's going to be handmade, here on the creativity, I was trying to find other things that could be interpreted as fun or informal. And what I came up with was using illustrations. Normally, when you have something that's more fun and informal, it uses like handmade typography. And as you can see, many of the things from creative can be interpreted as fun or informal too. Many of the characteristics that you are going to see here on this reference file could be for more than one thing. So these kind of lines, handmade lines, and these kind of fonts that I'm going to try to find that are more handmade fonts, that they are called script fonts or handwriting fonts. They normally are associated with more fun and informal usage than serif or sans serif. And it also could be used in the creative part here, but I associated with this. So here is the text. Every time that you are going to create and to put some characteristic here on the reference board, what you are going to do is you're going to create the title of the keyword that you are going to search for, the information in the visual references, and you are going to type a description, a brief description. 2 to 3 lines is just okay. But don't forget that we are not going to copy this. We are going to inspire by some very specific characteristic from these that we can see here. And I'm going to show you after that. So to continue, digital, I found that many digital things has this kind of pattern with plus signs or dots. Like in here, I think that it feels like a very digital vibe too, although it's something made by hand. You can see these dots here and these dots here, these kind of patterns. Here, the same thing. I tried to create. This is already a thing that was created by me because I saw it in many images and I thought, okay, I can add something made by me on the reference board. And also this awesome illustration that I found on Dribbble that has some kind of neon colors and gradient colors. So the gradient colors thing makes everything look like digital. It's not something that's very natural. You see these in very futuristic / digital things. That also is another characteristic that we are going to see in the future. Income. Income is a very different thing from the other styles. And as you can see in the reference board, we can see that we are mixing things that are very different from each other. This has nothing to do with this, that has nothing to do with this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. So they are very different styles that are going to be combined together, taking some characteristics of each one of these different styles. I'm not going to copy anything, indeed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and mix with this, and the mix that I did between these two is going to be mixed with this, and something new is going to born that doesn't look like nothing like this one here, and you can see a spoil right here. So from here, I felt that these shapes here that are very usual when it comes to money and to investments and bitcoins and stuff, these bars, these graphs, they are very interesting. We could use these kind of shapes to decorate our brand and to try to separate things and to try to guide the eye of the audience towards a specific region of our design pieces. And from this income situation here, what I took was the shapes of these kind of bars, graphs, these lines here. So I tried to inspire by a software that is used to manage money. And also feminine, this is another characteristic. I found when I wrote feminine in the description on the search bar of Dribbble and Pinterest, many things, and I also typed design after that. Many of the designs used serif fonts with high contrasts. So I think, okay, Lucas, but you already have a font that you are going to use, and it is script fonts. But yes, it could be, but we can combine more than one style of fonts. And I thought, because in this situation we have to use some characteristic to guide us towards more feminine style, why not using a serif font for the body texts and a script font for the titles? And this is what I did. In modern, when I found things like modern, you can inspire yourself by something like neon cities and gradient space and things that are futuristic and modern. Normally you can see this trend on everything that's futuristic / modern. They use many lights and you can see the pattern when you open the websites. I'm going to give you an example right now. So as you can see here, I just got into dribbble.com and I typed digital in here, and I can see immediately neon colors appearing everywhere. Here some kind of neon colors, and as you can see in this animation, the things here going on the movement of the light and stuff. Here you can see very neon colors, neon shade colors. Here again, lights and neon colors everywhere when you type digital. This neon circle here too. And as you can see, digital, here's the image that I found. And many neon colors and digital colors here. Gradient everywhere. You see this gradient here. You see this gradient here too, in this part, in this part, in these walls. So gradient is very present when you type digital. And if you type modern, also you're going to see neon colors everywhere. So very strong colors, some pastel colors too. And this is the kind of thing that you are looking for. So you are going to take many references and you are going to try to check and to inspire in very specific situations on this inspiration, because we are not going to copy anything, because the concept in the end is not going to look anything like this. We are going to take these kind of fonts as inspiration, but we are not going to actually use any of these fonts. So we just took in a very wide possibility inspiration, and we are going to narrow down it to a font that we like, that's a serif with high contrast. Here we can use these bars, but this doesn't belong to these people, because everyone uses this kind of bars. We're not going to use the same shades, the same colors in this situation. We are not going to use in the same purpose. And these are seen everywhere, so it's not actually copying. Here we are just going to choose some of these colors, or maybe not even the colors, just the concept of using gradients. So we are not copying, because we are taking a very wide concept of using gradient colors that are very common on digital pieces. Here again, I just took the inspiration of, okay, saying that I'm going to use a script font. The characteristic we took from here is, okay, we can maybe use illustrations. We can or cannot use illustrations in our brand in the end, but what matters here is we are going to use illustrations, even there has nothing to do with this specific illustration. In this situation, the same thing. We are going to use some kind of irregular shapes, but we are not going to use anything from here besides the irregular shapes. And this is what we are going to use to guide our brand towards the final stylescape, because we are going to take these characteristics that we write down here on this document, and we are going to create our brand right now. So in this very moment, what we are going to do is create your reference board, go after some references on Dribbble or Pinterest or in any other of the websites that I'm going to let you know on the document that I'm going to attach on the resource folder. And then after you have all the images and all the texts to explain what are the characteristics that you are going to inspire from each one of the images that you are using, we are going to the stylescape. I have to advise you here, don't rush this, do it on your own rhythm. and do everything until you find some characteristics that you feel that's going to easily represent the characteristics in here. And another thing that I have to say to you is you can write down and use many references here, but not everything is going to be used on your final brand. And in the next class, we are going to talk about how to create it in the practice. So I'm going to show you what I did and how I came up with the stylescape that I used for Daniela's brand. And you are going to see that some of the information that is on the reference board is not going to be used on the stylescape. So see you in the next video. Thank you for being with me until now, and I hope you are enjoying this. Hello again, welcome to this new class, and in this class I'm going to show you the process and the stylescape, where I'm going to present you how the brand looks like after the mood board and the reference board and all the theoretical part of the brand before we actually started designing the first board, and everything mixed together is going to give birth to the brand in the final stage of it. It's not the final project yet, because after this I have some new things to explain to you. Okay, so you already just seen my face, and we are going to jump to the computer where I'm going to show you the final result of the brand. And this is the final result of the brand. Using all the characteristics that I took from, I actually made two because I wanted to create two different color styles, and I think we are going to use the top one. And keep it in your mind that you have the stylescape, but even if you have a stylescape that's very, very close to the final brand, this is not the final brand yet. This is very close to it, and we are only going to define the final brand when we create the document, the branding document. And I'm going to present you in the next classes, and we are going to need some videos to go over it, but I'm going to explain to you how did I came with all this, so you can translate this to your own. I'm going to go through it very quickly here, very big so you can see it. So here's the name, here are some graphics that I'm going to use to help people to understand and to guide the eye, and also to do some decoration and some personality for the brand, because you know, these kind of things, it has a reason. It's to make people understand what you're dealing with when they see your brand, and also it makes your brand unique. It makes the people that are going to use the content from Daniela, they're going to know that the content is hers and not someone else's. Her brand is going to help her to identify her in the middle of a soup of other creators and stuff like this, or other kind of brand, if you are not going to create a personal brand for a content creator, because you can create a personal brand for a business if you want. It depends on your goals. So here I'm going to use this video to explain the stylescape, and you are going to be able to see that even if I use this top one, some of the things that I defined here is going to be a little tweaked when we go to the actual final design and the final brand manual. So one of the first things that you can already see is that this one used many of the colors of this. So I felt that it was a little too inspired on a single piece. So this is why I'm going to the top one, because I didn't want to be very similar. Although the style is completely different from this thing here, I wanted something more unique. The first thing is the color palette that you can see in both of them. You use the gradients that is from this kind of image, but as I told you before, in here you have these very dark images on the gradients. But in Daniela's brand, you can see that it's much of a lighter and different shade. Here I took some characteristics of this line inside from this image here, where you have a line style illustration. These graphics here, I took it from the style of the standard usage of the graphics on this kind of money investment apps. I used a very specific font that I found on Envato, I think this font is from Envato, and I used a font to write the logo, and I'm going to explain why the logo can be done this way. A very, very simplified way to use a logo and to identify yourself in the next videos, but don't worry about this now. This is going to be the logo that I'm going to use for her, and it is a script font with a name, and this is it. This is the name of the font that I picked, if you want to store it somewhere. And also the feminine font that I used, it was Playfair, but In the end, I end up changing it because it is a display font, and a display font on text box, on long texts, it is hard to read, and it was actually not made for writing long texts. I thought that it would be better to change the Playfair for another different high contrast serif font. Also, I used this pattern that I found in many different images, from pluses, signs, and dots with some kind of shapes that I could find the inspiration here. And as you can see, from the inspiration that I took from these dots and plus signs, it has nothing to do with the final result. These brush marks that I took from this thing right here, it's very different. Let me show the final one. The color palette, I'm going to explain to you what I did. Some kind of image that helps you understand the business a little bit. So I used a screenshot from my Instagram page, from the PC app, just for you to be able to understand that this brand has something to do with social media. And I also included some very simplified and fast-made mock-up here that in the final brand is also very different from this. But as you can see here, you can see the gradient colors, you can see the neon here, this light that's glowing out of the shapes. You can see the text, you can see a mock-up, a very quick mock-up from the final brand, the way that images behavior here. So this is what we are going to look for in the Stylescape, a very simplified version of your brand. It's going to be many alterations, and the final result is going to be very different, and I'm going to show you in the next videos. But this is what you are looking for. You are looking to create a composition that includes the person that is your target, your persona, that in this case is this woman here called Claire. This is what you are looking for when you create a Stylescape. By the way, all these graphics, in this case, in this situation, I already advise you to create things yourself. Don't take any of the things that you are going to use on your Stylescape from other sites, because this way you are going to avoid to copy things and you are going to start to create things by yourself. Again, don't rush this because you need time to do this. It is a long process. It's a hard process till you can come up with a final result like this one. But here we are already having a very close look of the final brand. We are very close to the final look of the brand. I feel very well about this Stylescape. In the next class, we are going to talk about the branding document. It's the guide with all the rules, the final rules, the evolution from your Stylescape to your real final brand. Thank you for being with me until now, and see you in the next class. Now we are closer to our final brand, and we are going to talk about the final brand manual. This is where all the rules are going to be created, and this is the place that you are going to probably lose the longer, because it's where you're going to create the actual final brand. The first thing that I have to say about this is not the way you should present your brand for a client. In this course, I'm not going to include the final way to present the brand to a client, but I'm going to cover it very quickly right now. One thing that you are going to notice here on this file that I'm showing you in the screen is that you already can feel the brand only with the cover of the document, and you shouldn't ever present the brand on the cover of the presentation of the brand to the client. And why is it? It's because you should always try to keep a mystery and try to show the evolution of the brand along the slides on the presentation, so the client can see that you didn't just took something from the internet. And you need to make your client understand how hard the process was. It's not just getting there on the software, on Illustrator, opening, and everything will appear like magic. No, it has all a thought, a mindset behind the brand, and you need to make it clear for your clients that you had a process behind the creation of the brand. And this is something that you are going to avoid to show on your presentations. You don't want your clients to see the final logo on the cover. This is the kind of file that you create for yourself or to send to the client after you do the presentation of the brand. The first thing that you see here is already just the brand and the niche that she's going to work with, and you already feel the vibe of the brand. If you stop to think about this, oh, these look like graphs, so probably has something to do with money, possibly. And also these plus signs and these digital things here, this handmade shape it was actually handmade. not handmade, but made with a pen tool. So here we are going to start. So create a cover that you can feel the brand with. The first thing that I normally do is I put one key sentence that would make people even more into the brand's vibe, like it was a kind of a mood board for your brand. Remember the goal of the mood board? So this is what we are going for here. We are going to want to create something that already can make the client or the person who is seeing this document feel the brand even before they know the brand. So here you can feel the vibe of the brand with these script fonts, with these shapes, with this shape and this brush on the background, these colors and so on. And this is something that I like to include on all my branding documents. And here is the key part for this class, because here is where I'm going to present you everything that we are going to do in the further classes. I'm going to send you this file. Don't steal anything from here, because this is my girlfriend's brand. So if you steal something, I'm going to notice it. So try not to steal something from here, but I'm going to include these on the resource folder so you can see all these topics and you don't need to remember them by head. The first thing that you want to define on a personal brand manual is the logo. And you are going to notice something very different from standard logos on personal brands. You can use the same process of creating a corporate logo for a personal brand, but it's much easier and I feel it's much more effective to do the way that I'm going to explain on the next class. So these are the basic characteristics of a personal brand that you need to include in the brand manual: the logo, the identity, the imagery, and the mockups. And they have subdivisions. And in logo, we are going to talk about the scale, how big or small we can use the logo, the legibility, that is the part where we are going to talk about how to make the logo legible, or being able to understand the logo and making it easy to understand. The positive and negative versions, that is the part where we are going to talk about how to use the logo in light backgrounds and dark backgrounds. All these rules, they are very important to write down and to have a document to control it, because let's suppose that Daniela grows her brand too much and she needs to hire a graphic designer. Although I'm a graphic designer, and if she had to hire one, it would be a bad sign, probably. I don't know. Okay, but if she needs to hire another graphic designer, the designer that would work with the brand should be able to work properly with the rules created by the first designer that worked with the brand. That in the case, it was me. So any other designer that takes this brand and works with this brand, even if I have to hire other people to work with me, they should be able to create the pieces of design that looks the same and doesn't look like it was made by Coca-Cola or Sony or any other brand that was not made by Skillshare, for example. This should look like it was made by the same person that created the brand. So it should convey the same message. So they need all the information on this document to create the full brand with this characteristic. And the don'ts are included. What are you not supposed to do with the logo? There are some rules of things that could not ever be done, and they are going to be on this manual. The background colors, because you need some rules to put on solid colors of backgrounds. The background images, because you need to make sure that people are going to use the logo in the proper way. Let's suppose that Daniela hires a designer and he or she makes something completely different from this brand. She's going to open the manual and she's going to show the designer why she don't want the work that the designer made the way they made it, because it's not the brand, and it is, and all the rules are on the brand manual, and they should respect the rules created in the manual. So it also teaches how to use watermarks, icons. It helps to create the identity with the color palettes, the typography, graphics. Graphics are these kind of things that helps you to identify the brand and also sometimes to communicate something. Not always, but sometimes to communicate something too. In the imagery part, it's very important to set some kind of rules of the images that are going to be used on the brand. How to use and take photos to use on the brand, on landscapes and portraits, and all the styles that should be used in images. And also, one very important thing that you should include on all brand manuals, it's the best way for the client to understand how the brand works in real life is to include mockups. So in this case, I created her a personal brand that's just going to be used for social media websites and mail marketing and things related to the internet. So I took all the characteristics of her brand and where she's going to use the brand, and I included some kind of mockups that are related to the work that she's going to create in the future. If I'm going to create a brand, a personal brand for a clothing brand, I could include here, instead of email marketing, for example, I could include some clothing, and there's no problem. And these are the characteristics that you need to include on a brand manual, and we are going to go over all of them in the next class. Thank you. Remember when I said that there was something very particular and special about logos for personal brands? The main goal of creating a personal brand is when you want people to think of you as a brand. A person should be a brand. And how do you do this? And why do you do this mainly? It's because you want much more of a personal connection to the audience and to the clients of this brand. So what we do to keep on the track of a personal brand is we can use like script fonts to write the name of the person instead of creating a logo, because it's much harder to connect with a logo than it is with a person. So what we can do here to create a more close connection with the audience and with the clients of the brand, we can use a script font to make it look like the person, the owner of the brand, wrote his or her name, in this case her name, with her handwriting. So it feels much more of a personal thing. If you want, you can even do it actually. You can handwrite your name and you can vectorize it and use it as your logo. And you can also do it with your signature. Many people do it, like Gary Vee, for example. So there is no problem on doing this because it will actually create a much closer connection with your audience and with your brand in this very specific situation, because you actually have a person behind the business. The brand is the person. You can't do this on a corporate brand. I mean, you can, like in Johnson, for example. I think they use this strategy because Johnson's, it belongs to Johnson. I think he wanted a much more of a close connection with the audience. And this is one reason that you can just type the name with a good script font that would look like it was handwritten by the owner of the brand. In this document, in the brand document, what I recommend you to do is to always make the main thing here, the main characteristic of each page here, the topic, whatever you want in the top, and some explanation of what this page is about. I wanted to explain why I used a signature or a script font instead of a complex corporate brand. In this case, I have here the explanation simplified from what I just said to you. Now, after that, what I'm going to include is the scale of the logo and how to use the logo in different scales. As you can see here on this page right now, I was decreasing the size of the logo in each one of the versions because we need the logo to be a responsive logo, because every time we use the logo in a different shape or in a different size, we can lose some of the characteristics and it could be very difficult to understand the logo. If we just took this thing right here, the logo, and we just, great, you can read it, right? Yeah, but the real size is not this. The real size is this one. Can you read this? I don't think so. If you can, congratulations, you have super eyes. And this is why I created multi-form on the logo, because sometimes we need a vertical logo and sometimes we need a more wide logo. So with different sizes, it comes different forms of the logo. In this situation here, they are the same logo, but it's just to show that you can use this even if it's smaller than the standard one. We want to include different versions that keeps it readable. Here I'm going to help you with the legibility. And what does it mean? You shouldn't include anything around the logo that doesn't respect these margins. And how do I make these margins in each file that I'm going to create? What I do is I take this O, this letter O, and I just place it here and I give this margin. So any other kind of images or shapes or any other kind of elements should be closer to the logo than this line. There are some exceptions in this document that's going to be shown later. It's good to keep it here. There are some exceptions. If we don't say this, so later I'm going to present the exceptions so people in the future don't think, okay, you didn't warn us before that it could be exceptions. So all the exceptions should be presented here, because otherwise new designers can come up with very crazy things in the future and they can like take all the essence of the brand away. I also like to include the minimum size to use on each logo, because I have the same thing here. They're the same thing, but with different versions of the logo. Here are how to use the positive and negative version of the logo. In this situation, it's very easy because the logo just have one color and it is very easy to understand because it's just the handwriting typography. But if you want something more complex, many times there are some things that change from positive versions to negative versions. For those who doesn't know, a positive version is when you have a dark text or dark version of the logo over a light background, and the negative version is when you have a light logo over a dark background. Here we have the don'ts. This part is amazingly important because apparently many people like to deform the logo when the logo gets to them. And we should avoid this at all costs, because a logo should be something very uniform that you should use equally in the same way in all the pieces that you create. And these are the don'ts. This don't stretch or transform. It's not just a rule for logos, but don't do it with anything. Don't do it with images, please. Don't do it with fonts, and don't do it with logos, because logos and fonts and images were created in the first place to be used in that specific ratios. So don't change it, because you're going to take all the work from the original designer away and you're going to destroy the font. And it is even hard to read the name in this situation. Also, don't ever change the position, because if you change the position one in relation to the other, in this case many people will start reading the downward, the word below first. Don't add elements. So these kind of elements may be cool, may look cool, but it would be something else. It's going to be a different brand, because the original logo doesn't have this line below it. So it's very important for you to make sure that this kind of thing is not going to happen to the logo. Don't use low contrast too, because this is very hard to read. Don't use outlined versions, because also it's going to be very hard to read. And definitely don't change the font, because if you change the font, it's another logo, it's another brand. And if you want to include other rules that you think along the way of the creation of your logo, even if you vectorized your signature, or even if you just used a simple script font like I did, it's very important to maintain the same look over all the logos. Also include the logo usage over colored backgrounds. And this is a place where I choose, okay, this is okay, this is okay, this is okay, this is okay, but this is not, because the contrast is too low and can be difficult to read. So I choose to forbid future designers to use the black logo over the purple background. And the same thing happens here, 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 and here. So here I defined how to use the logo over colored backgrounds. And here is how to use the logo over image backgrounds. We always should search for the most contrasty way to use the logo. So in this situation, I want to use the yellow here. Okay, no problem. But you would need to set something behind it in order to make the logo readable. Okay, I want to make the logo appear here. Yeah, don't use this color in this situation, because light backgrounds with light colors, it's very hard to read. And here the same thing, don't use dark logos with dark backgrounds, otherwise you're not going to be able to read it. Finally, watermark. This is an exception to the last one, to this one, because here I said don't use low contrast. Don't use low contrast without an image on the background, okay? So I'm not very clear about this, but you can be. As I created this for myself and for this course, I felt that I could explain this for you right now. And also for my girlfriend, so she knows that this is a specific situation here. Also, what I did is I created an icon to be used on the web. If we open here, we see the dribble icon in here. This is what's going to be shown on the top of your browser and also on the favorite icons. This is the reason the name is favicon. And I like to include this in all logos that I make, because it's much easier to understand a very, very small version, even smaller than this version here. It's much easier if we take something bold and put on the background and frame it in the right way. And we are using some organic shapes that is on on the brand manual. And finally, the last thing for this class, the exceptions for the rules that we created right here. These are the only things that should be used or that could be used behind the background besides images, of course. These kind of shapes are shapes that were created along the brand, and they also kind of has the same feeling of the logo itself, this handmade thing. So these are the only things that could be included behind the logo. And this is it for the logo class. I know that it can be overwhelming, but you should define all the rules that you are going to use on your brand, on your logo, because otherwise someone is going to take it, someone is going to use it bad, and you are going to be very pissed off because you don't want people to destroy your brand. So this is it, and see you in the next class. Now in this class we are going to discuss about color inside of the identity part of our brand manual. Jumping back to the computer. Okay, as we can see here, now we are just after the last thing that I showed you, and we are in the identity part where we are going to discuss the color palette, the color usage, typography, and graphics. We are going to split these in separate classes, these two in one class and this one in different classes. So now we are going to talk about the colors, and I'm going to teach you how to pick the colors for your brand. The first thing that you should know is here, when you arrive to this document, you already should have your colors picked. And how do you do it? The first thing that you should do is, when you are in the phase of the creation of the boards, the reference board is one of the most important parts. And why is it? It's because it's where everything is going to be born from. And how do you choose the colors from the reference board? When you are going to try to search for references, you have those characteristics, the main characteristics that you are going to use to develop your brand. Remember when I said before that we are going to use, for example, digital to pick some kind of characteristics to represent visually? You have to pick one of the characteristics from your brand, from the brand that you are developing, to be the origin, to be the main point where you're going to pick the colors. In this case, in the situation of this brand, what I did is I created a brand that was digital, and I searched in Dribbble and Pinterest for references on digital and modern graphic design pieces. What I noticed is that most of the brands that I found on Dribbble and Pinterest is that they use neon and pastel colors to represent digital and modern look. When you are able to see a pattern created on many graphic design pieces on the internet, it's probably because this characteristic is usual to be used in certain situations. And this is an example, the example of what colors normally are used in modern and digital environments. But you could choose a different characteristic to represent the digital part. You could use the shape instead of color, and you would still giving the same visual meaning to the brand. In this situation, I choose the color to represent the digital, but I could choose the imagery, I could choose the shapes, I could choose the fonts, but I choose to be the color. So I use the handmade part, handmade creation to represent the creativity, and I could use the colors instead. There are choices that you make along the way. What characteristic of your brand is going to be represented by which kind of graphics? This is what you're going to do in that phase. So in this situation, I picked the color to represent the digital part of my brand. And the first thing that you are going to notice here is in the old boards, I can show you, when I was talking about the style scape, I changed from these colors to these colors. And why was it? It was because if you look to this board right here, it's very hard to make a connection to the mood board. And the mood board should set up the mood for the brand. And this brand right here was not representing anything from this mood right here, or just a little. So I decided to change all the colors, or almost all the colors, from this palette to the palette that I took from the mood board. And this is why you are going to notice some changes from this to here, and also in the branding manual. The first thing that you are going to do when you pick the colors for your brand is to go to Pantone's website and find the closest matches. And then what you're going to do is you are going to use all the color systems here to represent the color that you are going to use. They're not all in the world, but they are the main, the CMYK, RGB, and the hex combination of colors. This is used to print. This is also used to print. This is used for screens. And this is used for websites and app development, so you can write code with it. After that, if you have some special uses for your colors or special rules for your colors on your brand, you should also include this here. Because in the case of this specific brand, I use gradient colors to represent that digital feeling that I told you before. So what I did to maintain that digital feeling, even if I changed the colors to the pastel or pastel colors that I showed you before, what I'm going to do to keep this modern and digital characteristic in the brand is I'm going to use these soft gradient colors. And here I teach how to use them. Not teach, but I show how they should be used. And yes, this is it for colors. This is what you should include about colors on your identity part of your brand manual. It's not everything, because there are some things that's going to be covered after this class, but it has much more to do. It has much more to do with images and coloring images. So I'm going to talk about them on the imagery part. So this is it for this class. In the next class, we are going to talk about how to include the typography and how to represent the typography in the branding manual. See you in the next class. In this class, we are going to talk about the typography, how to represent the typography inside of the branding manual, and also why I changed the Playfair font for the Noto serif that you are going to see on the computer right now. Here you can see that I'm using 3 different styles, but only 2 different font families. And this is why all my titles, it's going to be with this Bellimon font that you are seeing up here. What I normally do to show the typography and the fonts that I'm using in the brand is what you're seeing right here. I just type the title. The person who sees it can see all the possible situations here. He can see all the upper cases, the lower cases, and here you can see how does the font looks, each one of the characters, the uppercase, the lowercase is the numbers, the punctuation points and stuff, and you can see the same situation here. So just Control-C from here and Control-V to here and to here, and everything is just fine. So here are the titles that I used. So all the titles is going to use this font, the Bellimon script. After that, the subtitles, that is this kind of things here, the typography that you are seeing here on the left. I use a black version of the Noto, or Noto, I don't know how to say it properly. The Noto serif font in the black version is for the subtitles or subheadings, and you can see the same system. And the regular is the one that I'm using for the paragraphs that you can see here. So I choose this font because it's a very feminine one, because the contrast is very high. So as you can see here, the contrast on the A, you can see this very thin line, this very thin line of the A letter, and here you can see this very wide and very bold part of the font. And this gives more of a feminine, more clean look for the fonts. And why did I change from Playfair to Noto? It was because the Playfair is a display font. Display fonts shouldn't be used in long text. And because of this, I tried to find a replacement to the Playfair style that is also a font that has this very contrasty with this kind of serifs that's not very angular and not curved here on the stems of the letters and so on. These were the best replacement that I could find for the fonts. Also here you can see how to use the fonts, and here I explain all the standard sizes that can be used on the brand. The designer who uses this is not going to be able to follow these rules, the specific rules in every single situation. Mainly this part is not going to be possible to follow in every single situation, but they are good to be here because this is the ideal. Here I say that the title should have 3 times the size, and what I mean is 3x. You know, this is 1x. Let's suppose that this one here is in 10 points of size. This one should be 20 and this one should be 30 or more. But if it's 100, for example, this should be 200 and this one should be 300 or more. And this way you are going to always keep the same hierarchy in the text of the brand. So this is a very important thing to be here, because otherwise people could mess up the hierarchy. And the hierarchy of texts are something that says a lot about your brand and the behavior of the identity of your brand. So it should be a standard on your brand. When you have a subtitle and a text paragraph, they should have these proportions between each other. The subtitle should always be twice the size of the paragraphs, and the title should be at least 3 times the size of the paragraph. Also, I repeat here the weight of the text. This is black, this is regular, and this is the only version of this font. The Bellimon just has 1 text weight. I know this is a very short class, but this is it for the typography. You just need to show all the characters that you can use with all the fonts, show the family, so the person who's going to work with it are able to see the complete context of the fonts that you are going to use. And here you tell the new designer, or remember yourself from the future, how to set the proportions of the texts between titles, subtitles, and paragraphs. This is it for this class, and the next class is going to be a very short one too, because it is a very simple question that we are going to deal with in the next class. See you in the next class. In this class, we are going to talk about the graphics library, what it is, what is used for, and how to do it. Let's jump to the computer. So as you can see here, this is the graphics library that I created for Daniela's brand. And what does it mean? What is it used for? So here I created some standard graphics that should be used on the brand in order to make it recognizable. So every time that you see a style that uses these fonts, these colors, and these graphics, they are going to make it easier for the audience to recognize the brand. So I created them, and I already used them on the previous slides on here, and also in the stylescape that you saw, it's where I took them from. This is a very simple thing that you can create, and it's mainly used if you want to create a new design based on the brand that you are creating right now. If you don't remember any place where you used any one of these graphics that you are seeing right here, you don't need to find and spend lots of time searching for the file where you used some of the graphics that you see here. You can just open the brand manual and take them from here. So let's suppose that I want to use this graphic here. I just open the manual, copy it from here, and paste it on the final project that I want to use it with. I just realized that I had a layer above everything. No problem. It happens because of a bug on Illustrator that I don't know what happened when I was creating it. Whenever I create a shape or any kind of object or element on the Illustrator file, instead of creating it on top of other objects like you're seeing right here, it created beneath it. So it doesn't matter for this course, but you're just going to create this so you can have all the graphics in one place. And also don't forget, these graphics are not only for decoration, they are not useless, they are not just junk that's going to make everything harder to read. It's going to make your brand more memorable, and it's going to make your brand more easy to recognize along other brands. And I'm very quickly going to tell you why I did pick each one of these shapes. In this situation here, I picked this brush stroke to represent the creative part, because mostly creative people are associated with arts. This one is used to represent the economy part, just as this and this, because they are normally in the standard use of these graphics are in software to treat of money, to deal with money like investments. And this is why I picked these specific graphics to do it. This is the same reason as this, but mixing with this. So this plus this equals this. This one is kind of a paper cut thing that happens also to represent more of a personal feel or a creative feel, you know. So this is what I created this shape for, and these are more for the digital part. But also the digital part is present in every single one of these graphics, because this gradient is digital. This neon behind of this graphic it's modern and also futuristic and also digital. This here is a combination of the monetary with the organic feel, with the brushes, and also with the digital because of the color that it has. So as you can see here, I took many different reasons to create this the way I did. And this is what you should do too. When you create the shapes, when you create the elements to identify your brand, you should always be thinking from the characteristics that you choose on the beginning of this process when you were creating the persona and when you were tracing the profile of the owner of the brand. So this is it for this class, and see you in the next one. Peace. Welcome to one more class here with Lucas, where I'm going to talk about the imagery for your brand and how to represent it on your brand manual. Jumping into the computer. Here on this imagery thing, I always do these divisions to the person who's using this document know when I'm going to talk about different subjects. And in this situation, I'm going to talk about the imagery, landscapes, and portraits and how to use them. So here is how I use the landscapes. One of the most important things that you should know about this brand, at least, is that one of the greatest characteristics or more important characteristics of the imagery of this brand is as it has a very personal feeling, as it has a very artsy feeling too, because of the creative part. All the images should have a more natural feeling instead of that hard and strange feeling that stock images makes you feel. Always try to go for images that doesn't look like they are stock images, but in this situation, this is one of the most important things that you should keep in your mind when you are looking for images to use in the brand. Not only they do not look like stock photos, but this one actually is not. I took this photo, so it's everything but a stock photo. We are trying to search for photos that has low contrast and they represent things that are in great scale, you know, so big mountains, maybe cities. They are not here, but they are further in this document. Cities with high buildings and stuff like this, mountains, this thing that I don't know what's the name in English, I'm sorry, but you can see it here. It's the thing driven by the wind that generates energy. Okay, it gives you a sensation of growth, of big things, of getting bigger into some things, because it needs to transmit this message to the audience, because they are talking about growth on social media, so they need to know about growth. So this is why when it comes to landscapes, the image should always try to convey something like a message of something big. You should talk about the way that they should be graded, like low contrast, low colors. If you want all your images to have a specific color, you should introduce this here too. So all the images that I'm going to use in my brand must be blue or must have blue in some part. All the landscape images that I'm going to use should be about buildings or about mountains or about big things or with low contrast, and something about the gradient, the grading of the images too. And here the images of people, portraits. And this is how they should use. Whenever an image is going to be of a person and they're not going to cut the person like this, because this one is a cutted out person without a frame, they should use some kind of graphics to frame the image. When they are without the background, they should use this filter known as the dual tone filter. This is a filter that replaces the dark colors for one color and specific color and the light colors for another specific color. And this is what you should do in the portraits part. You should teach the new designers that's going to work with this brand how to work with the images on the brand. Here the grading part, here also the grading part of the images. As you can see here, it also is a very low contrast because the black is not black, it's kind of a gray or dark gray. So this is a low contrast, or they are dual tone that has a specific filter on the image. If you have any extra rule about your brand that has to do to imagery, this is the place that you can use. I'm going to give you some examples of rules that you can have on your brand that I don't have in this specific one. For example, you can say, okay, I only want images of black people for some reason. Let's suppose that your brand is a brand for products specifically for black people, or for images of girls or white people, or it should always include people, or it should always include tall people, or it should always include cars. So there are specific objects or specific situations that you need to create the brand for. I even have a brand that I work with that they want me to create a social media. In each one of the posts, I have to use people with different characteristics. So in one post, I use an Asian person, and in the other post, I use a black person. In the other post, I use a white person. It can have this kind of inclusive rules in the brand. So if you are creating a brand that has as its value anti-racism, this is the place where you could introduce this kind of messages here, because this is the place where we are talking about the images that we are going to use and how to show people. You can create crazy rules here if you want, but all the rules that has to do with images, they should be in this part of the brand manual. In this point, you almost have everything about the brand, because in the next one, as you can see here, we are going to talk about the mockups, and here you are already supposed to be able to create anything for the brand. So see you in the next class. Hello again, and this is the last part of this course. Thank you for being with me until now. We are going to talk about the mockups and how to represent them in your branding manual. Jumping into the computer, we're going to talk about Instagram, websites, and newsletter, but you could talk about any kind of mockups that fits your brand. And here is the place where you are going to talk about the mockups, and this is what it is. You just create an example of a thing, of a product, of the brand. In this specific situation for this brand, what's going to be created is an Instagram page on social media growth. The main way that Daniela is going to talk to her audience is through Instagram posts. So it's very important to include this here. If you are creating something for a brewery, for example, you could create a can of beer, for example, but it's up to you. Each brand is going to have different needs. If you are creating this personal brand to grow on social media, you always should include a kind of a single post and carousel, because they look kind of different in many cases. In this specific case, they are very similar, but they could be very different. And in here, I have these two examples. If the owner of the brand plans on creating many videos, you also should include a kind of a mock-up of a video frame or any other kind of video content here too. If I were creating my own brand today, I would probably include on the branding manual the covers of the videos that I'm posting here on Skillshare for you, and also in my YouTube channel. So these are the kind of things that you should take into account when you are creating your brand. Here, as you can see, I used the shapes, I used the images with dual tone, and here you can start to see that there are some differences between what's here and what was on the Stylescape. Because in the Stylescape, I didn't use the dual tone filter on the images, and the colors on the Stylescape were a little different too. And here is where I need to remind you that the Stylescape is not the final design. This is the final design. As you can see, this is different from what we saw in the Stylescape, though it's very close. So you can see it here. They are pretty different. This one had this, it was a little messed up because it had too many shapes, too many of the graphics that we created, and it turns out very confusing. And it's much more clear than this one. And I really feel that these and these are much more well balanced, and they work much better than this one for the brand. And this is an example for a website. This is how the website could look like. As I said before, you should provide the sensation of large scale objects like mountains, cities, and stuff like this. It will depend on the content that you are sharing in each specific situation. In this case, I'm just showing up how she could sell some products like discover how, this is a call to action in the titles on the website, the cover, the hero on the website, the menus, and the logo. How would it behave along other kinds of platforms that wasn't shown until now? Here is the second part. As you can see here, this is the rest of the website. So here is more call to action, maybe a product, but in a very simple way. It could be an image instead of this weird illustration that I made right here. I can see that it has some text, extra text. I don't like widows. Always try to avoid in all your designs these kind of things here. An alone word here on the end of the text. They are called widows and they are not welcome in design. And another advice that I have to you is when you are creating the mockups, avoid to use the Lorem Ipsum Dolor Sit Amet thing, this standard text box that is created with Illustrator or other softwares that I don't know. In Illustrator, they automatically create this text, this standard text. Avoid to do this. Make the sensation more real. Try to make the sensation more real of having actually something that it's a final version, because when we have this is the final thing that we are going to present our client, or the final thing that you are going to create for yourself when we are ending the brand. This is the final thing. So always try to write a text that's going to represent something that's related to the brand. This is the newsletter that I created for a style very based on the website, but with different proportions and different call to actions and different ways to represent the same thing. And this way is everything. This is everything of the brand. So this way, when the people reach this part of the document, the person who gets this document will know what they have to do to create new things. And this is one concept that I need to explain to you right now. Whenever you are, if you are a designer and you are taking client jobs, you always need to put an extra fee when the client doesn't have a brand defined. When the client doesn't have this specific document, you should always charge more, because it's going to be a hell of a lot harder for you to create all the content that you should create for the client. And I promise you, it's going to be much harder, because you are going to create things that the client's not going to be satisfied with, because he doesn't feel that what you created was his brand, because indeed it was not, because the client doesn't have a brand yet. So it's much harder to create, because you are going to lose lots of time when you are going to trying to figure out what you are supposed to do. And a thing that should be done in 1 or 2 hours is going to take you 1 or 2 days of work if you don't have a brand manual like this to work with. So if you are a personal brand, be aware that many designers are going to charge you more for the designs if you don't have this. So it's very important for you to have this. Even if you are hiring a designer to create this for you, keep it in your mind that paying for this kind of services, it's actually a thing that's going to be a way to spare money in the future. And if you are a designer, try always to convince your client and to explain to your client how important it is to have a document like this, because it's going to be much cheaper for the client to develop the next designs. And also it's going to be much easier for you to develop a thing that's actually good for the brand, because if you don't have this, you are going to just create random things that doesn't fit the brand of your client, because the client doesn't have a brand yet. And don't you ever forget that if you have a company, it doesn't mean you have a brand. They are two different things. And if you have a brand, it doesn't mean you have a company. So after the mockups, you just make a final thing just to close up the thing. And this is it. After all these things that I just explained to you, if you are able to do everything just like I said, it's going to be much easier for you to create your brand. And also, if you are here to create content for your Instagram, if you are creating carousels, you have my other course on how to create a carousel. And if you have this, if you create a brand manual to understand how to deal with your brand, creating a carousel is going to be much easier, and creating everything for your brand is going to be much easier, because you are already going to have some rules to follow. Many people like to, I don't follow rules. I don't like rules. I like things organically. Yeah, but organically doesn't work here, because with design you need to communicate and people need to remember who you are. So you need an identity, and this is your identity on visual communication. Besides just your face, this is what's going to help you. You may not like to have rules, but keep in your mind, you were the one who created the rules. What I need you to do for the exercise of this course is create your own brand and send me this file right here. Send me your brand manual so I can see what you came up with. Send all the boards that you created that I showed you before, on the previous file I mean, and also include the brand manual. Thank you for being with me until now, and see you in the next course.